Welcome everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. A little update this morning, a big story on GoLocal about a $20 million lawsuit against Toshiba by a woman from Coventry who sadly lost her former husband and her 4-year-old 2 years ago, and just a devastating fire. Very interesting story about how she's trying to rebuild her life and dedicate efforts to supporting causes for autism, and secondly, in the lawsuit and how she's pursuing that. In addition, today we'll have, after our friend Zach Levesque from Northpointe, we'll have Dr. Michael Fine at 12 noon, Governor Raimondo's briefing at 1 o'clock, and Chair of the Political Science Department at the University of Virginia, Jennifer Lawless. She'll be talking everything DC, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, you name it, she'll have it. Let's go to Zach. Zach, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be joining you again. Thank you.
So the world is spinning in this frozen realities, maybe thawing out just a little bit. Everybody's trying to make some level of sense of it. Let's go to your world, the world of financing real estate. That's what Northpointe does. What are the numbers you're seeing, and what are the implications of those numbers?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit last week about refinance applications, and they're still very strong, primarily due to the fact that interest rates have gone down pretty aggressively because of the coronavirus pandemic. I don't want to make an exact forecast on what's going to happen, but generally, if unemployment numbers go up, which we're expecting to continue to happen until we fully recover from this, the interest rate market should stay where it is presently. So the refinance applications are up. The numbers came in from April. We discussed this before, and we really all expected, and when I say we, finance people, lenders, real estate individuals, we expected a downturn in April, which we're seeing right now as the numbers come in.
And on those numbers, let's talk a little bit about the Rhode Island market specifically, southeastern Mass, but Rhode Island market. Where are you seeing the changes? What do those numbers imply looking forward?
So the April numbers, really no surprise. I think we were all surprised a little bit in March when the numbers came out stronger than expected as far as listings and sales in Rhode Island. But that really is because there's always a 45 to 60-day ramp up from going under contract to closing. So we expected coronavirus to start hitting real estate and sales numbers in April, into May, into June. Active listings in April 2020, this year in Rhode Island, there's 5,200, right around 5,200 active listings compared to 2019 through April last year, which was a little over 6,400 listings. So the inventory is down, not a big surprise because less properties are coming to market. Although you can list your property safely right now, I think people are taking a step back from that. So we saw a 20% decline year over year in April for active listings. We entered into a low inventory market, and we're going to come out of this pandemic into a low inventory market, which makes it more of a seller's market because there's less properties. And I think the active listings going down in April led to a higher median sale of $280,000 on properties versus last year at $250,000. So we're seeing home appreciation, and that might surprise people, but it's primarily due to the fact that inventory levels are staying low compared to last year.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal had a piece, data from the National Realtors Association, similar data, number of sales off about 8.5%, but prices staying right there, that there's growing demand, people have to move, want to move. There's been other reports coming out of New York City of just a significant number of people, especially middle-class people, after experiencing the crisis, wanting to move to other places. And Providence is one of those places that we keep hearing about as being a destination for people moving out of New York City. Those folks have money to spend. Even if they were in a less desirable condo in New York, that's $1 million. If they start moving up here in Mass, that's going to further put more pressure on the low inventory, right?
Yeah, I agree. And if more buyers flock to the market and eat up all these inventory, all these listings, excuse me. And I saw an interesting interview this morning on Squawk Box one of the contributors was talking about how in his building in Manhattan, and he owns his own condo, the restrictions are going to be indefinitely. I don't know how long it's going to last, but only a family or an individual can be in an elevator going up and down. And these little things that mentally affect people, they're worried, hey, is this going to be the norm for the next 6 months, year? Nobody really knows right now. So these little nuances are affecting people and affecting their decision making. And you bring up price point, for $500,000 in New York compared to $500,000 in Rhode Island, the property is night and day as having to do with the size of the property. You can get so much more for your money here. And with the population concentration in these cities, just a small movement of people could affect our market so greatly. And these factors, a lot of people think are going to contribute to a more aggressive real estate market and maybe even a continued inventory decline in Rhode Island as we emerge, from this pandemic. The sales were also affected very similarly compared to active listings in Rhode Island. Right around 1,400 sales in 2019 in April, compared to 1,183 sales in Rhode Island, April 2020 this month, another 20% decline. So we're really seeing 20% declines across the board. There's been so many forecasts, and people have asked me, and I'm not an economist. I did go to school for finance, but it's everybody's guess right now because nobody knows how the new social distancing rules, all the new phases that the governor's rolling out is going to affect things. 20% decline, I thought it would be a little higher. Personally, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I think may increase, or it might stay around the 20%. So certainly not a surprise, but 20% is a pretty large decline year over year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. You skipped over a really interesting point about those elevator restrictions in New York City. Think about it, if you live in a 20-story condo property, of which there are a gazillion in New York City, and you have to wait just to get to work to be able to go down in an elevator against all the other people that are trying to leave the building at between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning. That seems like an excruciatingly painful process.
Either that, or you can see a lot more people in better shape running up and down the stairwell.
Yeah, but can you be on the same stairwell as other people?
I'm sure there's going to be stairwell restrictions as well. There was an interesting report out of, I think it was Miami. I think it was the Dolphins. I don't know if you saw that, and they were outlining, because there is no real path right now, and there's no specific details on the reopen for many companies, many institutions, and they talked about seating might be 1/6 of normal seating in a football game. It would be ushers at the end of every aisle to let you know when you can utilize the bathroom. So people are afraid of this, and I'm not trying to scare people by discussing this, but these are the things that pop into individuals' heads when they think about either potentially moving, downsizing, getting into a bigger property. And, kudos to you. About a month ago, you had mentioned to me this whole New York thing developing. And, it's not just New York. It's going to be Boston. It's going to be all these metro areas. And, if you think about all of the people that utilize public transportation to travel, especially Boston, the Amtrak. I've ridden the Amtrak 100 times back and forth from Providence to Boston. Some people depend on public transportation to get to work, to get away from work, to get home. How are these people going to behave? And are they now going to take a step back from public transportation, which maybe forces them to move closer to where they work? There's so many factors in play that we really don't know the true effect until, we really go through it.
Yeah, it's got to put, is a little outside our zone, but for a project like the Fane Tower, it's really got to be a tricky element to whether or not that project goes forward. I'm not sure I want to leap into the 40th floor of a skyscraper when having to have all those restrictions and limitations. I might feel more comfortable having a 1 acre lot somewhere in Exeter or something like that. Let's talk a little bit about refinance. That's obviously a great deal, the volume you're seeing now. Are you seeing anything unusual in that market right now? Is there any kind of trends? I know we're only 2 months into from the first case in Rhode Island on March 1st, but are you seeing anything different that you haven't seen in the past?
Not really. Some of the guidelines we've mentioned before, as I've been contributing on the show, have changed, allowing the refinance process to be a little more streamlined. The appraisal piece. So a lot of refinances that we're doing right now don't even require a home appraisal, and that's really dependent on how much the client owes on the house. The automated system that we run the figures through, and the automated system of Fannie Mae and of Freddie Mac tell us whether we need an appraisal or not. So the refinance process has certainly been streamlined. I wouldn't say we're seeing less term reduction, but I think generally, if somebody feels comfortable that they're staying in their house, and let's backtrack a little bit. We talked about people being uncomfortable with being in public places, maybe getting away from owning condos and into multi-unit developments. You're also probably seeing people that are in their home now that maybe weren't thinking, I'm going to stay here for another 5 to 10 years, but you know what? I like my space. And that might be spurring refinances as well, because they now feel like this is more of a long-term situation. So they want to take advantage of saving money monthly. So I think there's an aspect of that as well. And I think especially in an economy like we are in right now with uncertainty, if somebody has the ability to save money, it's more attractive to them because, right now, looking 90 days forward, people are just not as confident about their own jobs and the economy than they were 6 months ago. So I think there's a lot of factors in play, but ultimately, with rates where they are, when rates go down, refinancing activity goes up. So there's a lot of those factors involved.
Yeah, we're seeing the highest level of savings since 1981. And that's a remarkable twist of this. We're also seeing the lowest spending, obviously, at 2 levels. One, people's insecurity, and secondly, there's not a lot to buy when you're at home 24/7. Accordingly, I think you make a really good point, though, about the psyche of the consumer right now. I mean, when you really think about, let's say you are planning to move to that next house, whether you're upgrading or downsizing, now you have to contemplate movers, people coming in to fix up your house before you're going to sell it. All those little things that you need, workmen to come in and make improvements before you're going to put the house on the market, painters, plumbers, whatever it might be. That's a huge difference in the thinking process about whether or not you're going to put your home on the market during this period of time. And as you keep saying, and I think appropriately right, we just don't know what the next 90 days are or 360 days are. So I think it is important to take that into perspective. Zach, you always get the last word. What do you have?
What do I have? Well, it's beautiful out, and 99% of my budget right now is food. So I need to go to the supermarket to get some more food. But everybody, as always, stay safe. It appears, as you've stated, we are starting to thaw, and there's some positivity happening. So everybody stay patient, and let's hope that we emerge out of this. Let's hope there's a vaccine expedited. There's so many things that could change this story right now, and let's all hope for the best, and let's support everybody around us and be safe.
Zach, thank you so much. Again, it's always informative. You've always got the best numbers, and I think for anybody in the housing market or a homeowner, some great places to be able to get some data and understand where the market's going. For everybody else, thanks so much. We'll be back at 12 noon with Dr. Michael Fine. Very disturbing numbers out of Central Falls. There's a story about that today in GoLocal. Take a look at that. 1 o'clock, Governor Raimondo, who's talking about some of the aspects of loosening restrictions. Rhode Island is ranked as the second most restrictive state in the country, second only to Hawaii. And then at 3 o'clock, we'll have Jennifer Lawless, the chair of the Political Science Department at the University of Virginia, talking about everything on national politics. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.